First myth is that there's something called the Jews, all of them as an entity since the beginning of history. One people, one race, same hopes, oppressed for 2,000 years, not individuals, but one entity. While if we took a look at Jewish communities in Europe and compare them to Jewish communities in Arab countries by the end of the 19th century, a quick look will tell us that this isn't real. Jews in Morocco, for example, were 150,000, in Egypt 80,000. By the beginning of the 20th century, Jews in Baghdad, Iraq were 50,000. That's 25% of Baghdad's population. These Jewish communities were part of the Arab countries they lived in. Jewish Arabs whose life and properties were safe. They have their own schools and worship places. There's no doubt they faced issues faced by any minority, but they were a part of the fabric of our society. All these countries belonged to the Ottoman Empire that was tolerant with the Jews there. On the other side, in Europe, Jews faced a different reality. A reality created by the change Europe was going under at the time. If we looked at Europe's map in the beginning of the 19th century, Europe was changing from grand empires into nation-states. These empires spread over huge lands, containing different people, races, and religions. Kings take heirs from each other, while the minorities are second-degree citizens, sometimes with good conditions and other times not. Jewish communities in European empires were a minority, a self-enclosed minority, living in what's called ghettos. Their communication with the outer world was limited. They saw themselves as different. But the new idea of the nation-states that replaced empires changed that situation. Germany turned from a few scattered small kingdoms into a unified German state. Same goes for Italy and Poland. You might be confused and asking, what's the difference between them? Good question. Let me tell you that this man, Dr. Fawzi El-Bedri, professor of Jewish studies in University de la Manuba, says that nation-states offered a promise of a new reality. No more minorities or majorities, just citizens. We're all German, or Italian, or Polish. We all have an identity that binds us, which is the nation. Even if we have differences in religion or race, we're all citizens and integrated in one nation. The Jewish reaction to this ideology was different. Some of the Jewish communities refused the idea. They saw that the one way they can still be Jews and not to integrate and forget their origins and history is to isolate themselves and refuse this new reality and differentiate themselves from the new identities formed. This fear was moved by the violence that many European Jewish communities faced, especially in Russia and Poland, so much so that the name pogrom appeared, which is a Russian word meaning killing the Jews, destroying their properties and burning their houses. Appear over time, and that integration is the solution. They saw a chance to learn and benefit from the modern, fast-changing European knowledge, and melting into the society when they get modern jobs, doctors, poets and bank clerks, they believed their culture won't vanish because religion and language will preserve their culture. In both cases, whether those in favor or oppose this new reality saw themselves as European citizens in European countries. Or what I said denies the existence of a separate entity called Jews. At the end of it all, Jews are individuals in communities with their conditions changing from best to worst or vice versa, according to the historical age and geographical place they lived in. The Zionist ideology is trying to do the opposite, to picture Jews as a unique condition in history, and that aggression against them is fixed and fateful. It's to the extent that a Zionist thinker called Leon Pinker says about anti-Semitism, that it's a 2,000-year-old incurable genetic disease and infection. Second myth, Zionism is Judaism. Israeli historian Ilan Pappé said that the worst thing Zionism did was manipulating Judaism to use religion as a justification for implementing an originally colonial ideology. Let me break it down for you. As I told you a while ago, some Jews accepted integration and others didn't. From those who accepted integration was an Austrian journalist called Theodor Herzl. He grew up in a very rich Jewish family, well educated with German education, only knows the word shalom. In Hebrew, His relationship with religion is almost non-existent. Some people say he was on the verge of atheism. Wait, Herzl, the father of Zionism and Israel, had a non-existent relationship with religion and wanted to integrate in Europe? That's the dramatic plot, it's the coming of age, the genre. In 1894, Herzl went to Paris to cover an important case for a Jewish French officer called Alfred Dreyfus. This man was accused of leaking classified information to the Germans. This case had shaken France, the people divided. Some advocated for his innocence while others accused him of treason. Till here, everything is okay. A case and a court with some acclaims, all news. But what wasn't normal, that some demonstration against Dreyfus were cheering with "Death to the Jews." That's where again? In Paris, the beating heart of modernism. It's true that some sources say Herzl over-exaggerated and that the cheer was "Death to the traitor." But what's sure is that in both cases, Herzl saw this as a turning point. This made him lose his faith in integrating in societies. So he was now prone to isolation. Honestly, he let go of the whole integration versus isolation ordeal. He went to a third option that wasn't known at the time, nor had an audience in the Jewish European communities, an idea called Zionism. So Jews weren't Zionists to begin with. Nope. Zionism is an ideology that appeared in the 16th century. It appeared between Christians, and especially Protestants, and even more precisely in Britain. The idea is simply that Jews go to Jerusalem and build the temple in preparation for the second coming of Jesus. The idea stayed the same until the 19th century, a normal idea that exists and no one cares for. Jews used to hear this and not give it much thought. You don't want us to be citizens and want us to leave, so you can be citizens alone. We get it all. Jewish Zionism in the 19th century, however, was different than this, especially Herzl's Zionism. It wasn't as simple as taking Jews back to Jerusalem. The Egyptian writer Al-Said Yassin, in his book Dissecting Israeli Mind, he tries to give us a clearer and more detailed picture on the Jewish Zionism. The Jewish Zionism is a racist ideology. It sees that all humans everywhere in all times have deep hatred for Jews. If you get a 4-year-old who just learned how to talk and asked him if he loves Jews, he'll say, "Yes, no biggie." Then the Jewish Zionist would reply, "He's just saying that, but deep inside, he doesn't." Zionism opposes the other who's not Jewish and sees that this hatred is deep inside this other for no alternative reason other than he's not Jewish. So the only solution for Jews to be safe, to create a state purely for them without those others. All Jews. No integration or isolation or communication. A state for only them. No one lives with them. Or at least they'd be the vast majority that rules. This ideology will be documented by Herzl in his book The Jewish State. Now, who exactly are the Jews? I don't have an answer to this question, but I can tell you the Zionist definition of it. The Zionist definition is that Jews are one pure race, from the beginning of times till the last of it. And that they don't just represent a religion. Judaism isn't a proselyte religion. They don't seek inviting others to their faith or marry inside their faith. So Zionism sees Jews as a pure people or race, which is also a racist ideology. Not just that, but according to the researcher Badia Amin, she says that one of the Zionist principles that Jews are only oppressed by others, but there could never be a Jew who oppresses another Jew. Remember the thing about the self-hating Jew. Zionism gets shaky when a Jewish criticizes it. In short, Zionism is based on a belief that the whole world hates Jews, that the entire world is anti-Semitic and those who aren't are prone to. Herzl saw that oppression, hatred and anti-Semitism were the power that will lead Jews to the solution, and in his words, "We are one people, our enemies have made us one." I find this idea a little scary, my friend, that the unification of some people is based on the hatred of others towards them, so you're defined by the people who hate you. Indeed, without anti-Semitism, Zionism wouldn't have existed. Can you imagine that there's an ideology that's based on people rejecting it, and once everyone accepts it, it'll fall apart? Herzl saw that anti-Semitism would be the power that would enable the Jews to build their state. In short, after all this, Zionism was an idea that reacted to discrimination against Jews with discrimination against everything that's not Jewish. So the solution is for Jews to live in a state by themselves. Herzl kept thinking, where would this state be? There were suggestions like Argentina, Uganda, Madagascar, Russia, because, like I told you, it had nothing to do with religion. All what mattered was to establish a state for protection from the hatred of Jewish that's deep within the non-Jewish. Let me tell you a surprise, that most Jewish communities whom Herzl suggested to the Zionism and state solution, they completely swept it aside. You go, and we'll come later. Those were the oppressed themselves. They were questioning why emigrate from the places they had been living in, rather than demanding their rights. Even if we emigrate, we will emigrate to the New World, America. It was already the first destination for European Jews, transforming New York in the late 19th century to the most important Jewish city in the world. The first Zionist Congress was set to be held in Munich, but interestingly enough, the German Jewish refused, so much so that many Hakems saw Zionism a challenge against the divine fate of diaspora for the Jews. That's when Herzl thought of the idea we spoke about earlier, which is, to convince all these people, I need a really nice story. Even if it's not real, I need a legend for people to believe in. In her book, A Short History of Myth, Karen Armstrong says that a myth is true because it's effective, not because it's fact. Herzl understood that Europeans were afraid of traveling to a place they did not know. Their answer was, what would we do in a place we know nothing about? And here is the thing that this cunt played on. What if the destination was known, guaranteed, and holy, like a happy ending to a sad story? This was the only way he managed to convince them. We won't immigrate to a new place, we'll go back home. At that time, in the first Zionist Congress in Basel in 1897, the Zionist movement announced its destination, Palestine. According to the Argentinian sociologist Pedro Bridger, Herzl turned the biblical idea of diaspora, this epic story, into a modern ownership document to own Palestine, for the immigration to be seen as not a political solution, but a religious duty. That's when the mix-up started between Zionism and Judaism. That's what created the fallacy that Judaism equals Zionism, and that anti-Zionism is the same as anti-Judaism. Third, a land without people. A land without people is the most famous Zionist idea. That's despite the fact that Palestine, during late 19th and early 20th centuries, was a fully integrated society with Muslim majority, Christians and Jewish minority. A society, despite its religious diversity, still was culturally homogeneous. Jaffa, the biggest city on the East Coast, had more than 60,000 Palestinians. It had cinemas, theatres and a port that was hundreds of years older than Tel Aviv's new port. The British delegate that came to Palestine between 1871 and 1877 wrote about Palestine an encyclopedia of 12 parts, where it wrote the names of 13,000 places. This leaves us with two possibilities for the meaning of sentence: land without people. The first possible meaning is interpreted by Pedro Bridger, that the leaders of the Zionist movements demanding going to the Promised Land, the Holy Land where their dreams would come true, they knew nothing about, because to them the world was just Europe. Their entire knowledge about Palestine was from adventurers and travellers. If you're a traveller, you won't go tell people in Europe that in your adventure to Jaffa you saw things we have like cinemas or theatres. It's not exotic enough. You've been to the East. Paint them a picture of the primitive East with tents, camels and the Thousand Nights or Aladdin stories, an empty land that awaits the return of the Jews. This is the first interpretation for land without people. The second interpretation is proposed by the Palestinian historian Salman Abu Senna, who said that a land without people was the Zionist intention, to get the land to be without people, and let me explain. Until the end of the 19th century, the percentage of immigrants did not exceed 3% that was at the time under the Ottoman rule. Hers was attempts to get the Ottoman Sultan to specify a land for the Jews. The Sultan refused, but left the immigration going. Because Ottomans and Arabs didn't have a problem with Jews for being Jews. If you're a Jew and want to live with us in peace, our pleasure. The immigration continued, and in 1907 the Zionist Chaim Weizmann established a land development company in Jaffa. Chaim Weizmann is an extremely important character in the Zionist history, a Jewish whose relationship with religion is almost non-existent, total atheist. This man company's goal was to purchase land in an organized manner from Palestinians. But according to the American professor Walter Lehn, in a farming society like this, landlords refused to give up their land for money because it was the base of their lives and livelihood, especially the deal conditioning expelling Arab farmers from the land. To make it a land without people, so we can get our own people. That's why the Zionists will only succeed in purchasing lands from so-called people who own many land but don't live there. Like one of the Lebanese families living in Europe who, in 1910, sold 200 km2 in Marj ibn Amr to Jewish entities. Till this point, it seems innocent. Jews immigrating from Europe to live and farm in a new place. But the structure of the farms they built didn't really insinuate this. What the Zionists did since the beginning, and continued doing with every land they took, was to refuse Palestinian workers on the land. You're not there to work with them, you're there to replace them, remember, a land without people. So this means all workers have to be Jewish, to the point where Marj ibn Amr witnessed the displacement of 60,000 Palestinians and were replaced by immigrant Jews. The second thing was land guards. Jewish security troops were formed called Hashema. Its goal was to protect these lands, because they always thought about anything outside this land as an enemy. This guard strengthened relations between Jews and the new land. The third condition was boycotting. We'll economically boycott Palestinians. I'm not here to make business with them. I'm here to make Jewish products and work with Jews. This way of handling the land was a Zionist strategy. It probably wasn't as clear at that time, but it hasn't changed much since the beginning of the 20th century. Although this strategy wasn't so clear at the beginning, it aroused concern with some Palestinians. It started appearing in some newspapers like Al-Carmel, issued in 1999, that publicly warned against the Jewish settlement movement. But the immigrations continued. Before World War I, the number of Jews in Palestine increased from 24,000 to 50,000. The number was doubled, but still wasn't big enough. This made the Zionist settler movement feel it'd take them 100 years. What would we do with 50K? We need to pace things up, and like anyone who wants to pace the project's growth up, we need an investor. And who was the perfect candidate in that case? In the normal fictional Israeli narrative, Britain is an enemy that tries to hinder establishing the Israeli state. While if you look at history, you'll see it's exactly the opposite, and that without Britain, the Zionist project wouldn't have worked. Until before World War I in 1914, and years after the immigration of European Jews to Palestine, their number didn't exceed 50,000, while the Palestinians were 500,000. Like I told you in the Zionist belief, if the Jews are a minority anywhere, they'll be oppressed. We'd escaped from being a minority in Europe to be a minority in a new land. That's when Chaim Weizmann makes a move and leans into the UK. Don't you want to help us leave you and go to Palestine? We're all Europeans. We'll be your arms and legs there for your interests in the region. The truth is, Britain did agree. It helped Zionism and eased the European Jews' immigrations to Palestine. One would ask, why Britain would so willingly offer help? I'll tell you. Britain in World War I was fighting Germany, and who was Germany's ally? The Ottoman Sultan's empire. It was falling apart at that time. Was it poorly? No, like really collapse. Britain, as a colonial power in its prime, had its eyes on some Ottoman states, or actually many states. One of these states was Palestine. Britain had intense fear that Germany would invade Palestine during war, hence it would be close to the Suez Canal, which for Britain represents its route to its colonies in India. You want to be as close to Palestine and Suez Canal, so you'd close it up and deny my access to my colonies in India. Of course not. Not just that. Palestine's geographical location is close to Mediterranean and Red Seas, and between the two most important Arab capitals at the time, Cairo and Damascus. So if you as Britain laid your hands on it and allow some European settlers there, they'll be loyal to you because you helped them. Here, the Jewish Zionism found its interest with Britain's colonial dreams.